One of the most common misconceptions about becoming a therapist is that graduation is the finish line. But I'm here to tell you that it's not the finish line, it's actually just the start. Hey y'all, grab your coffee and let's chat because I've been thinking about something lately. We spend so much time trying to get into grad school, trying to survive grad school, studying for our licensing exams. Then we get licensed, and then we think that once we hit all of those milestones and we wake up one day and we are gonna finally feel like we have become a therapist. And I don't think that is just how it works. I remember being in grad school and thinking like, once I actually finish, then I'm gonna know what I'm doing. Then I graduated and I still had the questions. I still didn't really know what population I wanted to work with. I still had to figure out supervision. I had to figure out my first job. I still had to learn documentation and the company's EHR systems. I still had to build my clinical confidence. And honestly, I think building your clinical confidence is ongoing, but we can save that for another video. Nothing magically happened though because I survived internship and practicum and got my diploma. And then as I navigated this becoming a therapist journey the second time around, because if you were around for my first video, I talked about my becoming a therapist process happening in another state. And then when I moved back to my home state, I realized that my whole experience was not reciprocal. So I started the process all over again. So this is coming from lived experience, all right? Not just opinion, not just hypothetical, but actual lived experience. And I know that's relative because our experiences are all different, but that's just a little perspective on why I continue to create the content that I create. But furthermore, me feeling like I was still becoming, I eventually came to terms with, and I started to believe, wait a minute, that's actually okay. Because the goal was never really to have it all figured out after graduation. Maybe that wasn't really the goal, or shouldn't have been the goal. And then maybe graduation and all the experiences that you feel after you graduate is permission to continue to become and to continue to grow. And I think something that really shocked me after finishing my program was that becoming a therapist really happens in the process of being in graduate school because there are qualifications, and we'll talk about that in another video. But the things that you do after you leave the classroom can make or break your entire becoming a therapist experience. You learn the theories in school, you learn the ethics, you learn how to become a therapist in grad school. But when you sit across from a real person, I feel like that's when things start to become real. And what's a little bit different than being in graduate school and being in internship, because you're not vying for a passing grade. At this point, this is your livelihood. And then I feel like that's when you start to really realize that this profession is not necessarily just about memorizing information. It's about learning how to actually connect with people. And I honestly think this is why I'm so passionate about talking to future clinicians, because I remember feeling like I was behind in a sense. I started to think that everybody had some secret sauce and I didn't have it. And then when I took a little career detour, it really made me start to believe that everybody just knew how to be a therapist and I didn't. But then I realized nobody really starts out feeling that way. I do believe that confidence comes from experience, it comes from reflection, it comes from your growth, not only as a therapist, because this is not your identity. It may be your role, you may be passionate, but you are a person before you are a therapist. It comes from supervision, the right supervision, making mistakes, learning from them, and then choosing to show up again and again. And so y'all already know at this point, my journey has not been straightforward. My path to becoming a therapist has not been linear in the slightest, but I am grateful for that experience. I stayed in one state, then moved, then I had to rebuild. Became a teacher for 4 years, then back to the therapy world. And for a long time, I was like, okay, this is a detour, right? I looked at those 4 years as a detour. But not really, because teaching taught me patience. It really made me a better communicator. It really taught me that people did not need perfection, and I still use those skills till this day. And so now when someone tells me that they are scared because they don't feel ready, I smile because I resonate with that thought. And not because I'm sitting from a place of, oh, been there, done that, superior, I'm better than you, but it's because I actually resonate with that feeling. I remember feeling the exact same way. I don't really know a single therapist who has said, yes, I knew exactly what to do on the first day. And if they did, I would question it and I would probably laugh. And I really think that becoming a therapist is one of the careers where you have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to sit with being a student of learning, a student of experience. No matter how many years you keep practicing, you keep learning, you keep growing, you keep reflecting. And I really do think that that's what makes our profession beautiful. And honestly, I do think sometimes social media may skip that part. We see the finished therapist, we see the private practice owner, we see the professor even, the speaker, the author, the coach. A lot of coaches out there. Not knocking it, but for an emerging clinician, it could be a little confusing. But we don't always see the years that it took for that person to become who they are today. The uncertainty, the first sessions, the mistakes, the growth. So if you are in grad school right now, or if you are studying for the NCE or whatever licensing exam you're slated to take, this all depends on the graduate program in which you attend or the track in which you follow. If you're in supervision and if you're questioning yourself, you don't have to feel like an expert to be becoming one. You're allowed to have questions. You're allowed to feel doubt. You're allowed to feel uncertain. You are allowed to learn. And in fact, I hope that you never stop learning. Because I honestly think that's what makes therapists great. And maybe that's the biggest misconception. Not that graduating and accomplishing a goal isn't important, because it 100% is. And it is literally a prerequisite of becoming a therapist. Those are huge milestones, but they're milestones and they're not the destination. They are the beginning steps of becoming the therapist that your future clients need. So if nobody has told you this lately, you are probably doing way better than what you think or what you feel. Keep showing up, keep asking questions, keep learning, keep growing, because that's how great therapists are built. Anyway, that's just something that's been on my mind, and I hope to see y'all on the next one. So make sure that you subscribe and you like and you share and you save and you send it to someone who is navigating this journey too, because maybe they need to see this too. All right, until next time.